Hi, and welcome to my channel. This is Yeva, and I've got a different kind of video for you today. I've got a tutorial on how I make my vellum circles, and I just wanted to talk about why I use them, how I use them, the products and tools that I use to make these, and teach you a little bit about my little vellum circles that I use. If you guys seen any of my videos, I love using them. I don't use them all the time, but I love the little detail and texture that it gives to each page, and so I want to share with you guys on how I make them. These are just some examples of pages that I've used them on. So sometimes it's to represent water. Sometimes it's just a little layering detail that just kind of brings everything together. I love the way it softens really harsh corners and edges and just kind of brings everything together. It gives it a bit of a flow, gives some movement, and again, just some extra layers or embellishment that's just very subtle. So here it's kind of it features the photos very well. It gives softness to all the corners, as you can see, and it gives movement, which I love. So this is just one of the examples, more of a bolder statement in a way. Here's one it's very subtle, and you can't even, I mean, it's there, but you can't really tell. So as you can see, it's there in the corners, and I tuck it behind lots of different layers, gives it a softness and some movement. Here's another layer, embellishment cluster of different sizes. I love using different sizes. And sometimes it's just big circles, and again, it's very subtle and just a really cool texture and feature. So I'm really excited to show you guys. Also, sometimes I use the actual circles, not a ring. As you can see here, there's a ring, but sometimes I'll just tuck in actual vellum circles for a bit of a different feature, a bit of a different embellishment. And yeah, so I'm excited to show you guys how I make my vellum circles and show you maybe a few different ways if you don't have the same products. So let's dive in. All right, so I want to take a minute and talk about vellum real quick. So the one that I always use and the one I always punch with is this translucent vellum, pretty standard. I've had this thing for a really long time in my stash and I keep coming back to it. I purchased it at a local store that went out of business a long time ago. So I've had it in my stash. It's a 48-pound weight. Now I don't fully understand the whole weight system, like high or lower kind of thing, because the other ones that I have doesn't say the weight. But for reference, the one that I use is a 48-pound weight. It's definitely a thicker material, thicker paper. I bought these other ones at Hobby Lobby, and they're definitely thinner. You can definitely feel the weight of it, if that makes sense. This is definitely thinner. This is much sturdier and thicker. So I definitely use the thicker ones because I am creating pretty thin rings, and so I don't want it to be to tear if it's just laying around, or when I'm running through a machine, I don't want it to tear. So this is a 48-pound vellum. I also wanted just to show you that I've had these and I've used these, but the way I use the patterned ones is just as a circle in itself, and I think creates a really cool design element on a page when it has just a little bit of extra layering, extra detail in your cluster. So as far as the patterned vellums, I would definitely use it just as a circle, and it creates a really cool detail. And you can totally use the thicker, clear, the regular ones as circles too. Creates a really cool detail like I showed earlier before. So that's the vellum, and if you have any questions, please write them down below. Also like and subscribe, you guys. But let's get on to the tools that I use on how to create the rings. All right, now let's talk about the tools that I use and have used in the past. So the first time I started creating these circles is I used my circle punches, and I honestly just started using them as an actual circle, and I would just punch it out, layer it up. I love the way it looked, and then I moved on to making the actual rings like this. And I'll show you how I make that in a bit. But I started with punches. Now, when I created them, I have a few that are a 1/4 inch apart, and I love the 1/4 inch rings because they're just dainty. They give that extra layer. They feel a little delicate. And so I definitely used a 1/4 inch. So I have a 1.5 punch circle, 1.5, 1 3/4, and a 2 inch. And so that's what I started with, and that's the ones I have. If you have, you know, more sizes of the punches, you can definitely go up and down in size. Now, if you don't have the 1/4 inch, you can still get a similar effect. This is a 1/2 inch, and I can show you the difference. So here's a 1/4 inch ring, and this is a 1/2 inch. Again, you can still get this same effect. They're a bit thicker, maybe a little bit more noticeable, maybe a little bit more heavier, if you will. So just play around with what you have, and so that's my tip, is I love the 1/4 inch, and that's what I have, and that's what I use, I'm sorry. So after using the punches for a long time, I loved it, but I just figured I need something that would create the circles much faster. So I invested in a die set, and again, I made sure when I was purchasing it that it was a 1/4 inch apart. There's a lot of them out there that I've noticed are 1/2 inch apart. So again, it would be just every 1/2 inch, which would be fine, and that could work too, again, depending on what you want. But if you're really going for these little tiny circle rings, definitely find a set that has 1/4 inch, or if you already have multiple sets, I bet you can layer them up to make them much smaller, smaller rings. Now, if you also have one of these, I forgot the name of it, but I have a Martha Stewart circle cutter with a blade, and you know, you place it in and it rotates. Now, I have not mastered this tool. I struggle with this thing on keeping it straight. If I go over the ring multiple times, it gives an extra, like, I can't get it perfect. Anyways, if you have one of these, if you have mastered something like this, bravo to you. Use one of these. This could totally work. You can also use a silhouette machine. Just, again, circles, 1/4 inch between. A silhouette machine would work perfectly for this. I don't have one. I use what I have, punches and a die set. So I will show you first on how to do it with the punches, and then this is pretty straightforward, but I'll give you some tips on how to use the die set. All right, so if you have punches and that's the tool you have, this is the way I make my rings, is with the punches. And again, like I mentioned before, I started with the punches when I created them. In the beginning, I just started using regular circles and tucking them in behind my embellishments, and I love that. Then I played around with the rings. And so this is how I created them. So I'd always start with the smallest punch that you have and then work your way out. So yeah, just start with the smallest punch you have and work your way out. If you do the opposite way, I'll show you in a minute, it's a hassle. You don't want to mess with it. And the only other restrictive thing about punches is that your punch only goes so far into the paper. You don't have the flexibility of going in to make a full circle. And I'll show you in a minute. So when I punch, my punches are getting dull. So I punch the first one. Here's the circle that you can always use, of course. And then I move up to the next one. And you just gotta kind of take it slow, find it, keep it steady. Don't rush with this, because you wanna be able to create that perfect ring. So if you can see, if I'm just too fast, I might make it too wonky. Again, if that's the look you're looking for, that's awesome. You can totally play around with the different sizes, but just take it slow. My little tip is kind of press lightly so it crimps, it holds onto the paper to see if you have it perfectly centered, and then continue to press. I think I have it off. That's okay. And there's the ring. Haha, ta-da! Pretty simple. So again, start from the smallest and work your way up. Now this is what I'm talking about. You don't have the full freedom of going into the paper to make a full circle. If that's really something that's going to bother you, or you want all full circles, I would invest in a die set, or if you have a silhouette machine, definitely would work perfect. So now when I started, I don't mind the cutoff edge because I always tuck my circle in, so I don't mind it too bad. Let's see. So see, it's not a full circle. But again, if you're tucking it in, hiding it behind embellishments, tucking in behind papers, it's not so noticeable, not so bad. And so that's how I created my rings. The thing I was saying about working backwards, where you take the circle and then trying to punch it, it's just a hassle, and I don't recommend it because you can't see where you're punching and how to get it centered. Now, unless you're going for that offset look, which would totally work. So it does create a really cool circle, and you can totally create a fun design or googly eyes or something like that. So if that's a look you're going for, awesome, just offset it. Otherwise, if you want that perfect ring, start with a 1/4 inch in between, work from the smallest to biggest. Now let's move on to the way I do it and create the rings now. All right, now I want to share with you how I make the rings today. So I use a die set. When I purchased this, I made sure that it was a 1/4 inch apart, and I got this at scrapbook.com. I'll link it down below for this exact one and maybe a few other ones that could work. And the other thing that I noticed is when I first made a bunch, I made some that go up to about 3 inches or so. But I find that I rarely use these, and this is my other tip, is that I personally like the smaller rings that are about 2.5 inches or so and smaller. I think it depends on the scrapbook page you have, the embellishment size, things like that. So I personally go for the smaller ones. But try out different sizes and see what works for you. So the way I make my rings is I take a bit of washi tape, and I stack them up perfectly, or as best as I can, to represent the rings in 1/4 inch. I start with the center one and then move my way out. And that way it just sticks together, and the little edges I can stick to my vellum. So I got my piece of vellum that I've pre-cut already, just makes it easier, a little bit less waste. And this is pretty straightforward depending on your die cut machine. I have a cuddle bug here, got my A, B plate. I'm gonna put my dies there on top, got my C plate, and I'm gonna run this through. Now when I go through vellum, vellum's kind of a thicker paper, so I go slow on purpose, and I go back and forth. So I kind of run it twice just to make sure that I get all the rings nice and cut. The first time I did it, it didn't cut through all the way, and I was like, what's going on? So I just go slow. I make sure that it gives a nice big impression, that pressure, and there you go. It cuts all the rings, and I just make a ton. Since I have it all taped up together, I don't have to rearrange it, and I just make a ton, as you can see. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you guys will try this technique. I'm really excited to see what you guys create and how you use this vellum rings. Please tag me. I'll link my Instagram down below. Please tag me. I'd love to see all your creations and all your pages that you make. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. One other tip that I thought I'd actually share with you really quick. If you guys have really cool, pretty floral dies or any other beautiful, intricate designs, I have this road ink dies that is just beautiful, beautiful florals. And I've actually created these with vellum. So I thought I'd share with you another way that you can create with vellum is using other shapes, obviously, and I love these florals, which would be so beautiful on a card, on layouts. I've used it on one other layout, which is actually right here. It gives such a cool and beautiful detail. It can be romantic, it can be just something that you just need layers and texture, or like this is on a boat, but I layered it up with the florals on a plain background. It really pops, it really stands out, and I think it looks beautiful. So I thought I'd show you on how I created this in a little tip. Now, I don't know if it's these specific dies that might be slightly thinner than the circle dies that I have, which I ran through as you saw, and then I ran through it again, so like forward and back, and it cut through fine, perfectly. For some reason I found when I use this specific die, and again I think it just depends on the die and the company or whatnot, it does not cut through. I have an example right here. It didn't cut through. It cut around the edge, as you can see, and it did just fine, but the inner pieces and the inner details did not. They're like creased, and you can see where they would pop out, but they didn't cut through. So my little tip and trick is to, when you do your make up your layers, so for example on I got my A plate, I'm gonna throw in a couple pieces of cardstock. I don't want to say just printer paper because that is really thin, just something just to give a slightly thicker when it runs through, it's slightly a little bit thicker. You can layer up a couple of pieces. I'm going to actually try 3 and see if that does better. And then I'm going to just do it with you guys. So I put a little piece of tape on the edge here, so it doesn't move when I'm cutting it and when it's in my machine. I'm going to cut out my piece here. I'll put in my B plate. And again, follow the instructions of your own machine, whatever you have. Place this down, all those layers. It is gonna be kind of hard to turn because of all the layers, but I think it will really give that extra pressure to cut through all the little intricate details. So here we go, let's try this. Ooh. Again, I'm gonna go slow and make sure it really presses through. Now I have the 3 pieces of layer, and that's really thick to go through, so I would start with 1, see how that goes through, you know, depending on your machine, and then maybe 2 pieces of paper, go up to 2 if it doesn't work. That was really hard with the 3, and I'm gonna run it through again. Ooh, that's really thick and hard. So yeah, maybe start with the 1 or 2 and see how that goes. So let's see. Now it did. Yay. Okay. So now it really pierced through all the layers and all the intricate little details, as you can see. So yeah, that's my little tip. If it doesn't cut through, same with the circles, depends on the machine maybe, sometimes on, I think it depends on the dies themselves, the thickness of them, or how raised the edges are. I think that's what it is. See, now that just came through. Yay. And then you use one of these piercers or a needle or a thumbtack or something to pop this all out. And again, these are really intricate and have a lot of detail, so you have to just be slow and patient and pop out all the little pieces. But it's really worth the effort and the time, because the detail on these are so beautiful, and then it just gives the coolest texture, the coolest little design element. Oh man, I really hope you guys try this out and tag me. I really want to see what you guys create with these. So there's my another little tip for using Vellum and one of these machines. Good luck, and again, thanks for watching.